missing person case is Thailand Purnia. Also, today's missing person case is Destiny. Today's missing person case is Haley Bible. Also, today's missing person case is Isabel Grace. Also, today's missing person case is Alexa Ware. So today's missing person case is Also, today's missing person case is Erin Teresa Lawrence. Today's missing person case is Jessica Marshik from What's up, mob crew? I'm Chris, and today's video Welcome everybody to the stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've got a great show for you. We've got Steve from True Crime Web who's going to be joining me shortly. Before we get started though, we're going to talk about a couple of missing person cases real quick. So I'm going to quickly share my screen here for a second. All right. So today we've got Lily McGowan. She is 15 years old, was last seen on the 23rd, leaving her high school in Rural Retreat, Virginia. It is unknown what she was wearing. Believed she got into a gray vehicle, possibly an SUV. The tag is unknown and no description of the driver. So if anybody is in that state, please look out for Lily McGowan, just 15 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. I'll kind of zoom in on here. And then we've got one more, which is from my home state, which is Isabella Kidman, West Jordan, Utah. She was last seen on the 21st near South Redwood Road. She's only 13 years old. Looks like it says she was seen getting into a silver SUV with an unidentified adult male. Apparently she communicated with on social media. Apparently she phoned a friend, and apparently it sounded like she was being coached on what to say. And then apparently someone grabbed the phone and disconnected it. So looks like she was wearing a black Rick and Morty hoodie, white sweatpants, and checkered Vans, which is seen here. So this is Isabella Kidman from West Jordan. So anybody in that area, just like me, keep a lookout for her. So, like I said, we've got a special guest. So let me introduce him. We've got Steve from True Crime Web. Let me unmute him. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great, sir.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about Jonbenet Ramsey Case. We've got a couple of topics. We'll go over the timeline, and then we'll talk a little bit about the evidence, and then a little bit on the intruder theory, and then we'll save a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions. Does that sound good? So do you want to give just a little bit of a background of so people that are new to your channel?
Sure. I spent 20 years in law enforcement. Started off, as most people when they first start in law enforcement, working in the jails, worked my way up through road patrol, eventually made it into investigations, and became one of our state's first certified crime scene tech. Did that for almost, close to 15 years as far as investigations, working crimes. Did all kind of crimes from simple thefts to all different types of death investigations across the board, from murders to suspicious deaths, natural. All of them have to be investigated because it's so easy to get a true understanding of the manner of death sometimes, because some deaths look like other types of deaths that foul play is involved in, it may not be. And then, of course, all the cases that appear to have foul play in, you have to really clarify those.
Nice. Yeah, so I am honored to have you on the show. Like I said, I'm considered a couch detective. It's really cool to actually have somebody that actually has, been in the field and knows the procedures and stuff. And you've given me a lot of tips behind the scenes on how you guys approach, kind of like a checklist when you come into, a crime scene, and just a lot of details that I just wouldn't even think about. So it's amazing.
I saw the transition of prior to the state programs that came along. The old school was just your senior officer went out there and investigated just due to seniority, and it was, some of those were very poor investigations because they had no structure. But once everything started becoming in a structured manner, certain techniques used, it totally changed the outlook and improved the odds of cases coming to a good conclusion of being able to solve them.
Good deal. So let's, I'm kind of still new to this StreamYard, so bear with me, everybody. I am going to try to share my screen along with Steve here. And we're going to kind of delve into, let's see if I can get this right. So can you see my screen all right, Steve?
Absolutely.
Okay, good deal. All right. So, we're going to talk about the Jonbenet Ramsey case. And so I've got the timeline set up from 12 a.m. on the December 26th. And I'll just kind of read out some of the timeline, because one of the biggest concerns with the way the case was handled is crime scene contamination. And so I'll read this first timeline here, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So so on the 25th, the Ramseys, of course, it came back from a party, and so at 12 a.m. Just at midnight, the family's neighbor, Scott Gibbons, remembers seeing a light on the Ramsey's kitchen. At 12 a.m. or 2 a.m., excuse me, the neighbor, Melody Stanton, allegedly hears a scream from the Ramsey's home. Her husband then reportedly hears the sound of metal on concrete sometime after the scream. Years later, apparently, they backtracked on her statement, stating she actually heard the noise 2 nights prior. So then at 5:30, Patsy gets up to make coffee and reports finding a 3-page note on the back staircase. And it, of course, on the ransom note, it says that Jonbenet has been kidnapped. The note claims to be from a small foreign faction demanding a ransom of $118,000 in cash. So I thought we would play the 911 call and then share your thoughts on it, discuss it. So let me play the 911 call here.
Police. What's going on? 5515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was it? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says FBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm Okay, I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh, my God, please. Okay, well, there's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please, okay? Hurry. Patsy.
So this is the extended. They kind of enhance. This is the enhanced audio where they kind of try to decipher what's at that end just before, because she thinks she hung up the phone, but apparently, it's those wall phones, and she didn't quite hang it up, so it kind of fell off the phone. And then you hear, some kind of conversation, and some people think it's Burke's heard in there. So I'll just play this real quick and then get your thoughts about it. Skip forward just a little bit here.
Patsy.
So they think it says, help me, Jesus, and then there's a male voice saying, we're not speaking to you, and then a child's voice supposedly that says, what did you find? Which you can hear something, but the power of suggestibility, obviously, you're going to hear that if I told you that beforehand. But you definitely can hear something, there is some kind of conversation going on, whether it's just between the two or, So what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, the start of the 911 call, all the way through to the end of it, different people behave in different manners whenever they're under stress. And regardless if she is under stress that she committed the crime or she's under stress due to the kidnapping, there's a lot of stress there that, to be analyzed, and you have to figure out which one it is as an investigator. Because regardless if you're the suspect or if you're the victim, there's still just the same amount of stress that would be involved in it. And the course of action that the 911 who received the call, what their next steps are, will be absolutely critical to the rest of the investigation from that moment on.
Interesting. So some of the things that people point out is, one of the things she says right in the beginning is, we have a kidnapping. Instead of there's a kidnapping, she says, we have a kidnapping. And that's always been kind of a controversial topic, because I think that some people think that's odd that she would come out and say, hey, we have a kidnapping. Almost like that's what, insinuating that they're,
us in the general public, I wouldn't be able to make much sense of it, but most certainly the people in power with the FBI, their analysts, and their professors at these universities, and that are trained, and these psychiatrists and everything, they would have analyzed all that and made great hay of one way or the other. There would have been some arguments exactly what was meant and how it was meant and what would have been, but that most certainly would have been discussed in the behavioral science units.
Yeah, sure. And then what do you think about, I know, like I said, that's not, something you would normally look into, but what do you think about how she ends the phone call without staying on? Isn't that kind of, usually people think that's like their lifeline. Like, that's always another.
The second, she made a phone call to family friends before she made the 911 call.
That's right.
And that is, but people have strange impulses, and I just don't. There's a lot about this, especially during this period, that does concern me. That when you need help, when your house is on fire, you call the fire department. When your child's been kidnapped, you call the police, and that's your first response. So I can see the argument that is made by the public that the second people you decide to call was law enforcement. The first is your friends. So there's a strong argument for one side there. Absolutely.
Okay, I am just grabbing some documents real quick, so we'll finish the timeline. Okay, so let me remove that. Go back to sharing my screen here. Okay. Can I put that in there? Oh, okay, perfect. All right, this is what I was trying to do. Okay. All right. All right, so you guys can see that. Okay, like I said, I usually use OBS Streamlabs, so StreamYard's a little newer to me, but you can see the timeline, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so moving on. So at 5:45, so after she makes so we'll go back one. So after she makes the 911 call, let's see, where did we leave off on? Okay, so then so at 5:45, before she makes the 911 call, she calls family, friends, Fleet and Priscilla White, just like you described. And then at 5:52 is the 911 call. And then at 5:59, so about 7 minutes after the phone call, the first officer arrives, Officer French. He arrives on the scene, the first of many from the Boulder Police Department to respond to the call. And then between 6 and 8, 4 more officers arrive at the Ramsey's residence. We've got Wes, boy, quite the last names there. And then their supervisor, Ruckenbach. And then Jonbenet parents have friends come to help search the home. So you've got just at least 4 more officers plus French. So at least 5 officers, and then who knows how many friends they brought over. So we're talking at least 10 people between the family, friends, and officers now coming over to the house, which is now a crime scene, and now is trifling and walking and basically contaminating the crime scene.
Absolutely. At 5:59 is when it started going wrong.
Okay.
At 5:59, when the first officer got there, as soon as he saw the note, there's certain procedures that departments have that if you do have a verified, it's not a missing child at that point. If you have a kidnapping note, we're not looking for a missing child that has run away unless you ask, is the child old enough to write such a letter? And of course, the child wouldn't be able to write this. And then we know that there was some type of being reported to us, a stranger involvement, a stranger abduction. And so at 5:59, the officer should and would have had the proper training to understand that, we have a kidnapping. And there's certain procedures in the abduction manuals of what starts happening at that moment. The responding officers, what type of area are you in? Because we don't, at that moment at 5:59, we don't know if Jonbenet has been missing for 5 hours or she's been missing for 5 minutes.
Right.
We don't know. And so you have to look at it that what can I do to lock down the area? And so, of course, you need backup there. So you may get 1 or 2 officers there, but then you start having a response of what do we do to start locking down the area? Because the child's only been missing 5 minutes. Where are the choke points? Where are the main intersections? So we can start doing some of the roadblock canvases so that we can stop traffic. If anybody is leaving the area, we can stop them from leaving the area with the child. And so there's certain procedures that should have been taken somewhere easily by 6:15 a.m. that certain things should have been happening at that moment.
Right. Yes. Kind of securing the scene, as you will.
Not only just, I'm not talking so much just around the residence, but the first choke point or main intersection that you can lock down may be 2 miles from the residence.
Sure.
Where you would set up that roadblock or all main entrances and ins and outs of around that residence. But that's just procedures of how that in the FBI and the National Institute of Justice in their manuals, they have certain procedures that you implement as soon as possible, because you have officers on the scene that can start securing the residence. That, of course, we don't let people into the crime scene. You take them to either the closest friend that lives across the street, and because you have they've already let the cat out of the bag that we're not going to not notify the police. We've notified them. They're parked in our front yard with the lights on. And so it's not, if they're watching, they know that police have arrived. So now they know that if we're watching, we have to get out of there. Even if it's someone that may not have the child may have been gone for, say, 2 or 3, 4 hours. But you have someone that's sitting there that's part of the group that has committed an abduction, that is assigned to watch the house and see how the family responds. That if you lock a stranger into that neighborhood, that is valuable information that when they try to leave, that we've ID'd somebody that doesn't live in that neighborhood. Good
point. Okay, so we'll press on in the timeline. So now we get to 8:10 a.m. So just a couple hours after the 911 call. The first detective on the case is Linda Arndt, who immediately begins her investigation. She would be highly criticized for not securing the scene correctly. Then she says it says at 10:30, John Ramsey goes missing for at least an hour, leaving the house to supposedly pick up the mail. It's later determined this couldn't be true, given the family's mail was delivered through the slot in the front door. I've kind of heard various things on that, but I do know that that him going missing for an hour has always been something that's been known. So then Arndt, so she's trying to, from what she says is, if you got John kind of wandering around, and then you've got Patsy in another room, and she's trying to be consoled by her friends. And so, and apparently she says that she's been calling her her superiors and wondering, hey, when are you guys going to get here? Keep in mind, it is the 26th. Apparently, a lot of people are on vacation. So this is kind of like their, I guess you could say, excuse of why there wasn't more help on the scene. It was just not enough manpower. How do you feel about that? I know we kind of talked about that a little bit.
From her not being able to lock down the scene at 8:10, she shouldn't have had that problem to start with. If they had started the proper procedures earlier, the scene wouldn't have had to be secured. That the investigators should get there to a scene that is controlled by the responding officers. They've got up the crime scene tape. They got the corridors up. They've got the family in a secured area away from the scene and all the other people out of it. But once she got there and saw what has happened, she needs to act on that and make adjustments and start correcting the errors that were made prior to her arrival. And as far as everything, that by 8:10 to 9 o'clock, I know everybody, are they trying to blame that didn't have the personnel? I'll make the argument that when you look in any community that you have the police department, not only do you have a police department, you have sheriff's offices. Some counties have police departments. You have state officers. You have parole, probation. You have DA offices. All of them have investigators. All of them have law enforcement and state powers. And you have the state agencies and federal agencies. You call them, tell them there's a missing, kidnapped kid, they come. There's certain agreements between other departments that law enforcement does prior to having a major crime. It's called mutual aid agreements. Mm-hmm. That if we need you, we'll call you, and you send everybody you got or can at a moment's notice. So, we're looking at 2 to 3 hours now. A lack of manpower 3 hours after a kidnapping, it may be a little bit slower due to the time of year, but they should have been by that time having a steady flow of people reporting to a command post at some location and being dispersed to start doing those roadblock canvases and those neighborhood canvases.
Right. Okay, let me pull this back up here. So now we kind of fast forward a little bit. Detective Arndt tells a resurfaced John Ramsey. So I know that she says from her interview that I forget his name, but she called her superior, and he said, "Well, why don't you have John, you and John go from top to bottom and see if you can find anything." And so she tells John, "Hey, you go this way and I'll go down this way." And so apparently John Ramsey takes his friend Fleet White, and they apparently beeline it, from what she says, to the basement. And at 1:05, John and Fleet discover Jonbenet's body in a spare room in the basement. Sadly, she suffered a skull fracture and strangulation. We'll go a little bit more over that in the evidence. But one of the things she said in her interview, she said that she told John specifically, if he found anything, not to touch it, not to move anything. But when he finds the body, he picks up Jonbenet, carries her up a flight of stairs, and sets her down in a spare room, and or in the living room. And so that's at 1:05. And then apparently she tells, because it's kind of, he laid her down in a spot that was kind of heavily trafficked area. So apparently she had him moved the body one more time. So she had been moved 2 times. So what are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, it should have never got to this point.
Yeah, right.
When you go in, officers go into a scene that we don't know how long the child was missing. We don't even know if the kidnapper may still be in the house. We have to secure that residence from top to bottom, every room, every corner, every closet, for the fact that what if she did just wake up and the kidnapper's trapped upstairs somewhere in a closet with her, or down in the basement with her. And so there's no telling that if it was an abduction, and we do have someone that these officers at this time aren't suspecting the family, obviously. So they're suspecting a stranger abduction, and yet they failed to absolutely secure that residence.
Yeah. Let's see. Thank you, Tom, man, for your $5 donation. When a millionaire's kid is missing, they take the priority on the case to shut down exits, as Steve said. Is there a map of the neighborhood from 1996? I'm sure. That's a good question. I'm sure I could find something on that. I'll have to look into that. Good question. So let's move on. So then at 1:30, finally, so Boulder policemen Ron Walker and Larry Mason arrive, search the basement and wine cellar for further clues into Jonbenet's death. And they finally, and this is why I have it highlighted, 1:30, they finally secure the home, preventing further arrivals. So 1:30, so what was the call at 5:30 a.m.? So it's, and then they arrive at 6. So it took 6 hours, over 7 hours to secure the home. So big problem.
Absolutely. A lot can go on in 8 hours.
Yeah.
A lot of movement outside, and we still don't know how far and what the outside resources were doing. I don't know if it's ever been clarified what other investigators were doing during this, and what law enforcement, and what notices and what bolos have been placed and put out. I'm not familiar with that. Have you heard any of those? What was going on outside the residence?
No, not as I'm not as familiar as far as everything going outside. I know I looked into a little bit, but that was kind of years ago, so I don't recall
I don't
yeah,
either.
that's something we'll have to look into. So then at 1:40, John Ramsey calls his pilot. He allegedly heard. Let me read this. John Ramsey calls his pilot and is allegedly heard asking him to prepare a plane to Atlanta. Meanwhile, law enforcement instructs the family not to leave town. And then 1:45, heeding the officer's warning, the Ramseys leave their house with plans to stay the night at the Fernies. And then at 2:30, police conduct an interview with the brother Burke, which reveals the 9-year-old had allegedly slept through the events of the previous night. At some point after this, his father is advised to procure an attorney, which he does by hiring Mike Bynum. To this day, police still don't know who killed little Jonbenet. So that's just I know there's a lot more to the timeline. We just kind of picked just a basic timeline because I know there's a lot more in between all of that. You've got the interview with Linda Arndt that tells a lot more of what was going on. But, we don't have we only have so much time today, so we wanted to touch on the timeline and then get over to the evidence. And so we're not staying too much on one thing here. So so the one piece of evidence obviously would be the 911 call, which we just kind of discussed a little bit, which some people feel it's odd that she had clearly said some strange stuff. I mean, I guess it's, you can't say for sure unless you've actually been in that situation. Everybody kind of reacts differently. But people do find it funny that she said we have a kidnapping. I know that's a big argument. And then the fact that she hung up the phone. And now to the ransom note, which is 2.5 pages. So what's your thoughts on that? 2.5 pages.
When I first, just the 2.5 pages is, like we spoke before, if I conducted or ever had or was going to do a kidnapping, it'd be as I got your kid, wait for contact and be getting up as much money as you can or something. It wouldn't be 2 pages. 2 pages is absolutely something that has to be looked at. That either someone is, there's staging involved in the letter, regardless of who wrote it.
Yes, the letter contradicts itself, and I'll just read the first little part and explain why. And that is, so I'll just read the first paragraph here. Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. But yet this small foreign faction can spell adequate and attaché, which I can't even pronounce, let alone spell correctly. But they can spell this, but this is a foreign faction. There's a lot. It contradicts itself. And then obviously people would say that there's even quotes from movies like such as Don't Grow a Brain, John. Some of the other stuff is it feels like if you were to ask, is it more likely a man or a woman wrote this? It seems like it's more of the writing would come from a female with the first 2 words, listen carefully. And then how explains, well, be sure to get adequate rest, John. So what do you think about that?
I've asked my wife to read it before the fact that my biggest understanding as women is that I absolutely don't understand them, and I'll never speak for them. So for me to be able to judge if this is a woman's writings, I have to ask the woman. My wife, she agrees with you that she believes it is a woman. I wouldn't be able to tell either way.
Right.
So I go with what my wife says on her on that, because I most certainly wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I know there's a lot of strange words in there, and words that you typically don't hear from a man. A man doesn't ever. I've never in all the arguments and fights I've ever been in my life, I've never had a man tell me to listen carefully.
Right.
That
Yeah.
most certainly is something that's feminine.
Yeah. So I actually for experiment, because I like to just kind of do things outside the box. Not that it's really outside the box, but I actually hand wrote it myself just to kind of give an idea of how long it would take just to copy it. And it took me, thinking back now, approximately 24 minutes to copy it, just to copy it. And my wrist hurt after copying those 2.5 pages. And so just to copy it, say 25 minutes for the average person. I would
just because a woman wrote it doesn't mean it's the mother. There's a lot of women out there in the world
yeah,
that could have wrote this letter.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the family. That
Yeah.
That may have had better handwriting than the male counterparts in that small fraction or foreign fraction. That it may be that it was another female. So
a little tip. Something a lot of people don't know is there was actually a practice note that was actually in the garbage that a lot of people have never heard of. And I would love to see what was on that. Just it's curious. Was it like a full page? Was it just a couple of words? Because now you're talking at least almost 3 pages of worth of writing that I would assume at least took at least 45 minutes to an hour to write, irregardless if it was the mother, anybody, just anybody would take. I would assume this would have probably taken at least 45 minutes to an hour to write, to think up and put on paper.
When you start having practice notes thrown in the garbage, you have in staging that may be an outside factor that is creating that. We're going to paint a picture that whoever wrote this letter lives here and they were just under duress, which it could have been.
Yeah.
But then also you could have that is the letter written for the fact to stage and make it look like it is part of the family, that they already knew what they were going to do, that they were going to, from the get-go, that John and Patsy would never see their child again. And, that everything was staged, and that whatever insult that the Ramsey family might have done to someone else, that they were going to punish the Ramseys extremely harshly. And if that was their goal, they most certainly did that.
Modern Crimes and Cards says the practice note said Mr. and Mrs. Interesting. I've never heard of that. If you could email me a link to whatever was on that or where you got that, I would love to see that. I've always been curious about that. So now I've got the handwriting analysis, and we won't go too much. Like I said, we're not going to dive too much because there's so much to the case. It's 25 years. There's a lot of stuff, but we're just going to kind of dip into a little bit of the 3 main topics that we have for today. But so I done a video where I kind of showed Patsy's handwriting, and some of the 2 letters that I'll just talk about is the way she does her T's, where she kind of connects the T's to the next letter. Not everyone, but you see that a lot in the ransom note. The T connects to the H, and as well as the does this one have her A's in this one? I'm not sure. I just picked up one. This one doesn't show her A's, but she also has her A's, which are like 2s almost, which I found kind of interesting because the A's in the ransom note are like 2s, Pull this up here. But yeah, most of the A's have kind of got that 2 set up, which I think is definitely unique. Just kind of, and fortunately I didn't grab that one. I don't think she's got an A in here, does she? And then you sent me the this, which is interesting. Do you want to explain this, Steve? This is Chris Wolf.
Yes, he was another suspect in the case that one of his former girlfriend sent in and took an ad in the paper and published. She had went out, and he's a journalist, and she took a lot of his handwriting from some of his journals and created a letter. Don't know over what vast amount of writing she had to go, but when you take his handwriting, and she took certain sections and certain words and recreated the ransom note from his journals and all his writings. And when you look at the two side by side, it is very, very similar just by unprofessional eye. And so you have to say that, and this, if nothing else, this proves that two people in the same geographical area could write in the same manner and may have similar looking handwriting. And it's with this in mind that we can't always jump to the conclusion that just because Patsy's writing was so close that it couldn't have been written by someone else. And but I don't know at what words. I don't think she had any combination of where Chris Wolf used listen carefully. She had to piece together words, I think, from what it looks like. I don't know or not. But if she didn't have to piece together those two words, that is a very strange combination that if Mr. Wolf just out of nowhere wrote down listen carefully, that me and Mr. Wolf would be talking about that.
It is interesting. That, like I said, my only argument to, we talked about this before, is how much writing did she have access to? If this was just a couple of journals he wrote and that she took from, or is this like a year's worth of? Because if he was a journalist, and this was back in the 90s, so obviously it was much computers, so a lot more handwriting. How much access did she have to of his writing? Because I'm sure even if somebody took all my handwriting, I'm sure you could put this ransom note together, except for the A's. I don't do my A's, anything like that. So there would be certain letters but I would think overall you could kind of do this same thing, but that would just be my argument.
You'll never find in any of my writings, listen carefully in any.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Consecutive. And so that would be a very odd thing. But I'd have to find out if that's something that she put together, or if he actually, is that something common he did in his journal? If so, then, what you do in your normal life is often reflective of what you do in your criminal life. No,
very interesting. Good point. So that's for those who don't know Chris Wolf, because I have not talked about him on my show. So let's read his little bio here. So Chris Wolf, a freelance journalist, became a suspect when his girlfriend called the police and said he stormed out of the house on Christmas night and came back the following morning with muddy clothes. So this would have been, obviously, Christmas night was when, sometime between Christmas night and morning, or Christmas, the 25th and 26th is when Jonbenet would have been murdered. So she's saying between that time frame, he was kind of gone during the night, came back the following morning with muddy clothes. He became furious when he saw news reports of Jonbenet's death on TV, which is interesting. The ransom note signed SBTC. Wolf had a sweatshirt bearing those initials that stood for Santa Barbara Tennis Club. He had written an article about John Ramsey's company, Access Graphics, and may had access to information about his bonus. He was a friend of Bill McReynolds. And Bill McReynolds is the Santa Claus, right? Remind me in chat, Bill McReynolds. I want to say it's Santa Claus. I could be wrong. The theory that there was more than one intruder has been seriously considered. So, pretty interesting that he was gone that night, if that's true.
Absolutely.
Bill McReynolds. I'm pretty sure that's.
I bet you're correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because he passed away. I'm waiting for Chat to update me. Yep, Santa. Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. So, yeah, he did. So yeah, that's Chris Wolf as someone I have not featured. I did like a suspect list, but there, that was one I did not feature. But that is pretty interesting. If he did have this SBTC, that's initials on that sweatshirt. Okay, let me pull. Let's see. So we're almost at the hour mark. Okay, so now next piece of evidence, obviously the body. We're not going to go too much into full detail. Just so the autopsy revealed Jonbenet had been killed by strangulation and a skull fracture. The official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation. So it's believed that the blow to the head was first, and then asphyxiation after. And I heard from the documentary that because you would think that the blow to the head would have caused all this blood and everything, but apparently from what the Dr. Spitz says, that there was no break in the skin. So her skull was cracked, but they didn't tear the skin, so she was bleeding eternally, but not. Would you concur with that, or?
I know that when you hit soft tissue, and I've seen it, been there. I've hit people in the head with flashlights, and I know exactly what happens.
Really?
Yes. I've been actually sued over that. But in life and death struggles, you got to do what you can do to survive.
Right. Yeah.
And and not only that, but when the soft tissues are trapped between any type of hard surface, such as a metal flashlight, and the skull, which is hard bone, it ruptures, it splits, and sometimes it's very clean, almost looks like a knife injury. But when the skin splits, and it doesn't take a lot of force for that to happen. But when it does happen, there is a lot of blood and everything. From skull fracture or something of that, I would think that for that to occur, it would have been over maybe a harder, broader surface than a concentrated edge of a flashlight or golf club or something that has where there would be small contact area. I would think more of a broader area of the floor or bathtub or something that's broad and that's not so fine edge as something that has a curvature to it.
Yeah. So for those in the chat, we'll do answer some questions. So if you want to save your questions, Elaine, because I just saw you put a question. If you want to wait until we get through to the end, and then we'll answer some questions. So let's let me pull the window back up so I can skip it here. So apparently she was strangled with a garrote, which was made out of a broken handle of a paintbrush that belonged to Patsy. And then they had gotten some rope and made two ends. And supposedly that's how she had it still around her neck. And she also had her wrist tied. So now this is where it gets kind of controversial. This is something because this is a case that I've been honestly I've been on the both sides of the fence. I've thought it was the family in the beginning, and then I heard the Lou Schmitz theory, years and years ago, and I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. The stun gun theory, and then like I said, 2016 when that documentary came out, and they talked about the train track being the same size as these marks here. Because like I said, and I've kind of made this argument multiple times, but back in the day, we didn't know about stun guns and like what they would do to people back in like the 90s or even
I did.
early 2000s. Yeah, you did. We didn't, like, we had cops, because we don't have the internet back then, or YouTube anyway. So it's not like today where you get to see people getting tasered and stunned all the time. So back then, the stun gun theory made sense. We thought, oh, stun gun, it stuns you and you knocked out.
No.
So I always thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's how he incapacitated her without alerting everybody else and got her down to the basement or wherever the crime took place. But
stun guns has a lot of different effects on different people. But
yeah,
I've probably been hit with a stun gun 30 or 50 times in my career. That, boys will be boys. Law enforcement, stun gun fights. There's nothing to it. But they're stun guns aren't all they're made up to be. And I can tell you, in a stun gun, I never had those markings with a stun gun.
Yeah.
Now, with a
Yeah,
taser, I did.
Right. Yeah, because they have the prongs. Right.
They have the prongs. They'll
Yeah.
penetrate. They'll break skin.
Right.
And that's what this more appears to. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't have took the stun gun and absolutely used it as a weapon and tried to impel her with it. That might have caused this type of point injuries from a stun gun. But that wasn't caused by the injuries. It could have been caused by the metal contacts being forcibly pushed in against bone and caused the bruising, or the railroad tracks. But stun gun, just from electrical, has never left those marks on me. But that doesn't mean, I don't know what her skin type was or how, anything about how she was or what type of stun gun it was. If it was, which I don't believe it was. I don't go along with that theory.
Oh, okay. So you don't think these marks come from a stun gun?
No, I would go with kids playing with railroad tracks.
So, okay, yeah. See that? Okay, we agree there. Yeah, because like I said, I didn't really know much, back in the day about stun guns, and that just kind of added up because she's got these marks in a couple of areas. And like I said, in that 2016 documentary, because they had a train track in the basement, just next to the room that her body was found, and they have different ends, but one end here actually has just the two prongs instead of the three, and they match up exactly with the width between the two marks.
Everybody ever saw hit with a stun gun cussed or screamed.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
And whereas when they're hit with taser, now with a taser, I've seen some people just absolutely lock up and go to the ground. But I've never seen anybody just lock up and go to the ground with a stun gun.
Interesting. Yeah. And now they did have tasers, maybe probably back then. Did they have tasers in the 90s that shot out the prongs?
Yes, they were coming out, but they were law enforcement use only back then. I know it was mid 90s or somewhere they were coming out with them, but it was new technologies, and we reason we didn't get them because they shot me with one and it didn't. My sheriff said they wasn't going to buy anything unless it put me down.
Oh, so you're kind of the test dummy, huh?
My wife cusses me to this day for that.
The guinea pig. Okay. And then this is another kind of concept. I think that, let's see, as far as evidence. Oh yeah, we got two more. Okay. So, because I think this is a pretty big one. So, autopsy revealed that she had some vegetable or fruit material, which may represent pineapple. Which was eaten a few hours before her death. Apparently, it was still like being digested. It wasn't in her stomach. So they figured that she had clearly eaten something and then was murdered sometime shortly after that. And then, of course, if you believe in the Burke theory, it's apparently they got, maybe Burke was up already. He was getting some pineapple because he liked to eat pineapple. And then Jonbenet got up and she went downstairs and probably grabbed a piece of pineapple, and that made Burke mad. And then, so the theory, what the Burke theory is that he got upset because she grabbed a piece of pineapple, and then he took the flashlight, whacked her over the head, and then then somehow poked her with the train tracks to see if what was going on, and then it was a big cover up. So just to kind of, but I think adds to the timeline at least with the pineapple. What do you think about that as far as?
Absolutely. I mean, she's a girl that is mobile. She's able to get up. She may have went down to get, John said that she loved pineapple. So
Yep.
she may have been so hyped up on whatever she ate at the parties or whatever, or she woke up or heard something, and she may have went down there on her own, or she was taken down there on her own by someone. Or it could be the theory that Burke was up and they met down there, and they could have. There's any theory on that is just as plausible as another, other than the injuries part. Because like I said, when you hit somebody in the head with a flashlight hard enough to start fracturing bones, generally there is some type of skin rupture.
Interesting. Yeah, so because apparently there was Patsy's fingerprints on the bowl, but I think that could be explained with, you do your dishes, you run up through the dishwasher and then you put them away. You're going to leave fingerprints on them. So she could have done her dishes and then just put those bowls away just recently, maybe just that day, even that morning. And so now she's got her fingerprints on it. So that's kind of an argument for, the other side, I guess. But to have fingerprints on glassware and
it's like having DNA on it. You're not going to do anything when it's family.
Yeah. So the DNA. So we'll just kind of discuss a little bit about that because there's been a little controversial stuff coming out. So apparently in December 2003, forensic investigators extracted enough material from a mixed blood sample found on Jonbenet's underwear to establish a DNA profile. That DNA belonged to an unknown male person, and that excluded DNA from each of the Ramseys, the mother and father. But and then that would obviously that would clear the parents as suspects in 2006, I believe they officially cleared them. So, but now there's been some controversy with that because now there was a report in 2016, and it said that the analysis says that there, which is more sensitive techniques than what they had in 2003, says that this original DNA contained genetic markers from at least 2 different individuals other than Jonbenet. So apparently there could be up to 3 people's DNA in this. What any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, will technology get better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the greatest chance is that now, if this is from DNA within the family, of course, it will mean nothing. You'll never get a conviction from that. But if it's from a stranger, it shouldn't have access. And most certainly no stranger would have access to her personal clothing. And so if once it makes that progress and sciences get to that point, that's the greatest and probably the only chance that this case will ever come to closure.
Yeah, and so for those who haven't seen my latest video, I think it was my latest video, I talked about because John Ramsey was at CrimeCon and he was doing a petition, which I kind of put up and I put a link to, because apparently he feels that the Boulder, Colorado, they're just sitting on all this stuff, and that now the DNA is advanced so much that he wants a new company or an outside source to come in and handle and check it out. So which I like I said, I sent that petition out, and I think that's great.
Absolutely.
So
who doesn't want it solved?
Yeah. Lex Luthor, who is True Crime Web. So Lex Luthor, as you can see under True, this is Steve. He's got a banner behind him, True Crime Web, former detective. I've kind of collabed with him on a different channel. We'll hopefully have him on again soon, because he's been giving me a lot of tips behind the scenes on how, because I'm just a couch detective. Just a guy that was been lucky enough to have a channel where I cover true crime, but I don't have the experience like Steve does and the kind of the knowledge of how procedures are. So it's really cool to get the perspective from law enforcement.
Thank you.
So let me pull this back up. Okay, so the intruder theory. So I'm going to play a 2-minute video. It's Lou Smith. I don't think this has audio. It's just 2 minutes, just showing him his how he got in and out. So we'll quickly play this. So he's showing how you could get in through the basement window here. And now this is where people say there's a little controversy, because I think if someone like him would have probably cleared out all the cobwebs or spider webs or whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I apologize, I don't have audio. I just wanted to show this little clip here. And then, of course, there was a suitcase that was placed, and I've got a photo of it. So let me remove that. Get back to what we're at. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay, is that upright? Okay, perfect. All right. So, yeah, I've got a couple of diagrams up here. I've showed the basement window. There's a photograph. It's a crime scene photo where you've got a suitcase, which at the time when they were interviewed, the Ramseys, they said that they had no idea who this suitcase belonged to. But it is later learned that it was actually the other son from the other family, John's other son, John Jr., I guess. That was his suitcase, which contained his items and blanket and stuff. So, and then, of course, on the right side here, we've got cobwebs, and I just put question mark, not disturbed. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, when you first look at this, you see cobwebs, and there's the argument about undisturbed cobwebs. The only way we know they're undisturbed is that what did the cobwebs look like whole? There's 9 different types of cobwebs out there. This one here, just from this one picture, seems to be like in the triangle family of spiders cobwebs, but it's missing a leg. But fortunately, with DNA, if law enforcement had went in and took DNA from the webbing, they could identify what type of spider that was that made that web. And from that, they would see what a normal web size was. And if a normal web by this spider is 1.5 feet across, 2 feet over a vast area, then of course we can say that it was disturbed. But
Right.
If it's one of those webs that is a very small web that is within those dimensions with just one leg missing, then you can say, oh, okay, it wasn't mesh web, but it wasn't very large to start with. Mm-hmm. So people saying that it's not been disturbed, we don't know what it looked like last week, last month. We don't know the species of spider, but if they've done the DNA testing on that web, some of those answers would have been done. We would know.
Interesting. And then to go a little bit further, so that's kind of talking about getting in, and then I've kind of talked about getting out. And one of my arguments as far as getting out using this suitcase is unless this has got a bunch of bricks in it. If you go to stand on this suitcase, I think 9 out of 10, unless you've got perfect balance, it's going to tip over. We used to like run across because my friend used to have suitcases, and we'd kind of stack them up. We'd put some things in them, but they'd still just tip over, unless it's, it's.
I look at the suitcase as a possibility of how we were going to package. If it's an intruder, you walking down the side of the street or through the yards carrying a dead child is not something you would want to do.
Right.
But if this is a kidnapping, we have to have a way that if we're going to kidnap, we've got to leave the area. We've got to be able to transport a child, and we've got to get that child from one location to the other. And there's been a lot of bodies throughout the years that's been transported in suitcases. Did he take it over to the window to check to see if we could get that suitcase through that window? Mm-hmm. And then found out that, oh, I can't get it through that, and then make it through the grating. And he just abandoned it and said, okay, well, I can't run down the street with a dead child, and just left both and went on his way.
Interesting.
There's a lot of different possibilities.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's see, let me pull this back up here. Like I said, we'll move the suitcase early that morning. Oh, interesting. Okay. So here is just like I said, a diagram of the floor plan. Like I said, they basically had four main floors, I guess, basement, main, second floor, and then the third or top floor, as you would call it, where the parents were staying, where their bedrooms were. And then at the bottom left, here's a picture of the backyard where you can actually see Jonbenet Ramsey's balcony. I always kind of thought, because I just feel like, in my opinion, I don't think he came through the basement, and that's just my opinion. If it was an intruder, I would think if it was an intruder, they would have more likely have came through this balcony. Any thoughts on that? Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I just realized it's. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, good. Yeah, it disappeared for a minute. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, go ahead. It did. Okay, there we go. Okay, I got it. I'm sorry.
On a large home like that, and I don't know where their keys were, don't know the work history of their employees that came and go, don't know how often they changed locks. But whatever the history for the whole residence over the years of people that were employed there, or people that had access through cleaning operations that know where the keys were, or had access even one day and may have been able to make a copy of the key. There's a lot of ways to get into a residence if the alarm's not on. I think there's been some controversy that the alarm wasn't on while they were gone. I don't think it was activated. And so most certainly if there's an intruder that was there prior to that was walking around the residence, if it was on, the motion part of it, if it was activated, would have come on. So there's a lot of ways that people can either hide keys that can be found, or make keys, or they just simply fail to lock a window or a door. And I can, and if you use certain locks, if you just, there's a lot of different devices out there that you can slip a locked door open almost in less than a minute if you know what you're doing. Just like people can get into car doors, they can get in residential doors, and they do it with a lot of different techniques. You can go on YouTube and see it.
Yeah, and this was back in the 90s. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, this is back in the 90s, so it's probably not even as advanced as what we have, the security systems we have now. So it'd probably be easier back then, I would assume. Well,
when most of our burglars, when we called them, we looked at their driver's license. You knew what they used them for.
Oh, yeah.
Locks. If you ever stopped somebody and they handed your license and it was eat up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you see that in the movies where they take the driver's license, and that's like, I think I tried that once when we were younger and broke.
I've gotten into hundreds of homes that way.
Oh yeah, I think I probably broke my father's or mother's credit card or something.
Yeah. I don't do credit cards. license is a different story.
Yeah. So, let's see what we got here because we're almost at the end here. Okay, yeah, we are. So before we answer some questions, what anything everything we've gone over that you would like to address? What? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say while I ask him that question, if you guys want to put some questions up, we'll go for about 20 minutes. So if you want to start putting some questions in the comments, and we'll try to answer them. I'm sure it'll be for Steve.
Well, I'm under the theory. I know that you lean more towards it wasn't an intruder.
Yeah, I lean towards the family. That's like I said, I've been on the fence multiple times. But the 2016 documentary, when they talked about the train track, that really kind of shifted me back to the family because I always thought the note was staged. I think we could all agree that the note's staged, just whether it's the family or not. It's definitely to throw people off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm more towards Smith and the John Douglas. You got two leading investigators of great minds that were on the scene that know far more about this case than any of the average. You could take 1,000 average citizens and combine all their knowledge, and they're not going to have anywhere what Smith and Douglas knows about this case. Smith, there's always been arguments about why he may have done certain things. But I don't think you could ever question about John Douglas's motivations. So I always believe, and I still think to this day, there was an intruder.
Yeah. Modern crimes and cards. Patsy had all her cronies come over. Should have never been allowed. Yep. What was John concerned about? His Atlanta trip? Laugh out loud. Do you want to take that, or you?
Well,
kind of speculation, I know.
Well, I've seen several of his comments, and he is totally that he's on the family side that John was involved in it. John was the one that found him, and most certainly. And if that is the case, they'll never be able to prove DNA or otherwise, and so he'll take that to his grave. If that is the theory that is true, the case is over.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna go. Like I said, if you want to leave a couple questions, I know I saw one that was for you, Steve. That's yeah. Sorry, I'd seen one. Like I said, put a question if you guys want to answer it. Trying to go back through the comments real quick because I know I've seen one.
And anyone committing injuries to their own child in that manner, the other additional, a child dying under the custody of their parent is one thing. There's a lot of different ways accidental deaths occur. But when you start doing additional injuries to a loved one, that is not something that I believe that most people would, go to the extent to cover up. That regardless, you just wouldn't put a garrote around the child's neck and all, and twist it and do what was done. I just don't see that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard to think about. With this case, I kind of go with I guess you could say Occam's razor, but just where when it comes to a murdered child, it's the it's the parents first, then the extended family, then friends, and then outsider. So that's I kind of just go with the most likely.
I think you hit it when you said friends. They're not really friends.
That's exactly. I know. I was thinking about putting some documents up, but we'll have to maybe do a part 2. But yes, I would love to have known what the friends know. I think that would answer so many questions. What was going on between 8 or 6 a.m. and when those friends came over?
The last part of that letter is almost written and the point to make to John that you insulted me and now I'm insulting you. That the way it is written and the way it is phrased to him, use that good, it's a very degrading combination of sentences.
Yeah.
To tell you that, you used these words against me or your mannerisms against me, but I remember them and now I'm going to punish you for that. It's a very strange letter, but like I said, the professionals would have a greater insight than I.
Yeah. What is the likelihood that the Chris Wolf guy would use initials that could trace back to him? Yeah, that's a very good point. Unless someone was trying to frame him. Yeah, I think that would be pretty dumb to put those initials, the SBTC. Maybe, like I said, I almost think that could point towards clearly somebody knows somebody, that the family and some of these people, to put that down if that was referred to him or something. So definitely back to staging.
Well, at the end of the day, law enforcement created this debacle. From the time they got there, they allowed it to grow, and this isn't the only case that's ever happened to. And I've seen a lot of cases like this, and it's sad. But we have to get our law enforcement up to that. They won't make these mistakes, and it'll never be that way. There always going to be evidence destroyed at a crime scene. As humans, we're going to make mistakes, but fortunately, there's enough cases that we don't make enough mistakes that we get to this part of that a crime can't be solved.
Yeah. Just kind of looking through. I know I've seen a question towards the top. Let me skip back up here. I know someone had one early on, and I wanted to get to it. It was by Lynn. Oh, I'm trying to find it, Lynn. If you want to put your question again, because I'd seen it, and I'm like, oh, wait until the end. Yeah, that's a good one. What abductor killer comes without weapons, without his 2 to 3 page ransom letter, waits in a home for hours, hoping he can eventually and successfully abduct a kid from her room, only to kill her there? Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Steven?
Well, if it's a friend or someone that has access to the notepad, doesn't mean that the letter was written there at the home. I mean, did you have somebody that was there that lost their job, or someone that says, hey, this is Patsy's notebook, I'm going to take it home with us and we'll write it, we'll do, when people are intent on staging a crime scene and they know certain things are going to occur, that, we look at the case of what was the little girl's name in Florida that in the pool?
Casey Anthony.
Casey Anthony. But she went on there and was
Kaylee Anthony was the girl. Yeah,
but on the computer, they went in and researched how certain things could be done, and so people will go to a great extent to stage stuff, not knowing that the outcome is going to be. Although with this case, when you start writing ransom notes that you're going to take, and then you go and you execute, I mean, that's a good question. What type of killer would do that? And that's a great argument for it being someone from the house. And that's an argument that is justly and rightly argued on for that side. But then there's other arguments that counter that well, maybe that's not exact. We don't know if they came or didn't come with a weapon. They may have been armed to the teeth. We don't know.
The wife of Rock, do you think the DNA evidence found on Jonbenet might have come from a person who worked at a factory who made her undergarments? I know the answer. Do you want to?
No, I'll go with you.
Okay, so because they did this in 2016, they actually tested. They just bought a 3-pack pair of little girl, girls' underwear, and they just did a test, and they found just a minute thing of DNA. And of course, they didn't know who it was, but they figure it came from because obviously it was a fresh package that came from the manufacturer. So obviously it come from somebody who had handled it. So it is definitely possible for there to. So one of those, because apparently there's 3 genetic markers now. Apparently at least 2. So yes, one or all 3 could come from the factory. From what because that was not Dr. Spitzer, but the other one, Henry Lee. He's always involved in these high profile. But yeah,
experts are experts, and it's their opinion. And experts can be wrong. I can be wrong. Everybody can be wrong. I've made mistakes before, and I'll make a lot more.
Yeah. Let's see. I've seen another one at the most. Trying to frame it. Oh, we already answered that. Okay, that was just big. Okay. Seeing a granddaughter. Yeah, that one's true. What do you think about that? A group of their peers indicted them.
Well,
but without obviously it
let me
being signed.
And this is something that is very strange. This is probably one of the strangest things that came out of the DA's office, because Alex Hunter was so anti indicting John and Patsy Ramsey. Yet with a dedicated DA, the old saying is that you can indict a ham sandwich. That when a DA wants to indict you, they can indict you. And this is probably one of the strangest things that does give more credence to your side of the story. That even with a DA that wasn't convinced and was almost to the point of being protective of John and Patsy Ramsey, they still came back with an indictment. And so that is probably the most concerning part to me, that gives a lot of weight to your side of the crowd. But I still lean towards the other side. But
yeah,
this here is that's the strongest statement of any, that there's a lot of evidence out there that says. But now they would have heard. I don't know who all they heard from. If they heard from the police departments and certain select individuals only, it would have been one-sided. But this DA would have had the ability to go in there and guide and make certain statements. I've been in there in front of a grand jury, giving my evidence for trying to get an indictment, and the DA just, rips you a new one, and you think, where did that come from? And they let people out. And so DAs have great power and great influence within there, and that's a strong statement for y'all's side of the story.
Yeah, I would love to hear what the Fleets had to say. The Whites, Fleet and Priscilla White. Yeah, I would love just to hear their thoughts. Now, do they still have gag orders on them, or how does that work? Any idea, Steve?
Courts, yeah, they can seal and gag and do everything. It's just sometimes people speak it out. And I believe
Right.
that's that came forward. And I don't know how the indictments came out. I can't remember if it was some type of court action that allowed from a news agency or someone that went in and found that indictment. I don't know how it was finally released.
Oh,
but most times, all investigations and grand juries, arguments and everything, they're inaccessible. You have no idea.
Yeah. Patricia says everything that happened inside the house, not a single lead to anything outside.
And that's due to a lot of the failures of law enforcement because
Mm.
we don't know what the neighborhood canvas was.
Oh, yeah, that's
And the
true.
roadblock canvas would have revealed that
Sure.
if they had incorporated and gone by the book from the get-go and secured that residence, that some of these questions wouldn't even be relevant or even being asked. But it just due to the failure of law enforcement has created this atmosphere of unknowns.
Yeah. Just looking. They should have immediately fired every single law enforcement and transferred them on the day she was found. Everything on this case feels like Ellie involved were afraid to do their job.
Yeah, I agree with him 100% because if you cannot find a child inside a house, I have no confidence you're going to be able to find the killer of the child.
Yeah. Good point. Let's see. We'll do. So we're almost at 1:30. We'll take a couple more if you have. Let's see. It's looking. It's crazy. See if we can find any more. Yeah, okay, this is a great comment. Not much of a question, but I agree with this. The letter is so out there, it reads like a Hollywood script. And boy, have I said that in my live show before. It seems to be contrived and just written to throw everyone off. And I think we can all agree on that.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. It was one of two. Whoever staged it, that letter is for staging, regardless of who wrote it.
Yeah. Didn't the Ramseys live in a rich area? Yeah. Yeah, that was a nicer neighborhood, as you would say. As a matter of fact, Whisper says all of Boulder is pretty uptown. Oh, here you go. You're awesome, Steve.
Thank you. I'm not really. I'm just old country boy that had a pretty interesting life.
Oh, here we go. Journalist Charlie Brennan sued to release the GJ papers. Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like Unsolved Mystery is definitely has got a lot of knowledge about this. So I'm just looking. Well, any final thoughts that we hadn't gone over?
Oh no, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak to you and your community.
Yeah. But so yeah, what do we have to look forward to on your channel? If you would like to.
Most of the cases that I'm going to progress with are going to be cases that can be looked at that have some type of supporting evidence that the community, the web sleuth community, can have an impact on. He'll have. I'm going to be looking at cases that have either video or audio that relates to the crime scene, where it's either actual coverage. Because when you try to work a case just from news releases and public rumors, there's not a lot of impact that web sleuths can have on the case. So I'm going to try to be looking at all the cases, whereas there's video of the suspect before, during, or after, and analyze the news briefings and try to work up some profiles on some of these bad guys.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be cool. I'm excited. And like I said, I would love to have you on again soon. And as far as me, I'll be doing and I'll be talking with you. But I've got I just got my order in.
Excellent.
It's an ugly brown hoodie, but it fits me. So, but for those that follow the Delphi case, oh gosh, this looks like a dress. But I'm a tall guy. But yeah, I've got my brown hoodie here. I'm trying to show it. I've got my scarf. I'm still waiting for a couple more things. Anyway, the point is I'm going to be dressing up as Bridge Guy, but this time I'm going to have the iPhone 5, all the different material as far as clothing, a lot more accessories, I should say. So it's going to be a lot more because the first 2 times were kind of test runs. So this time
You
it's
did a
going to
great
be
job with that. And like I said, what we talked about the other day, do that for me and send me some, and I'm gonna see if I can't do some of my magic on, and create some extra content for you, not for me, but for you.
Well, we can collab on it, and then so I'm just trying to think. So I put his link to Steve's channel. Yep, there it is here. So if you want to go check out his channel, he's just starting out, so give him some time. But because it takes a bit to kind of get going. You're learning new things every day when it comes to producing videos.
I'm lost as last year's Easter egg on this, man.
Yeah, and as you can see, I'm still learning. I mean, 'cause I don't use StreamYard that much, so I'd already messed up because I had set my stream up for YouTube for my OBS, and I completely goofed up on that. So, but we're all human and we make mistakes, but we learn from them. So, one more comment. I got to do this. Yeah, Grady Judd. Yeah, everybody wishes they had a Grady Judd in their county. Yeah. So, but with that said, I think we hit the 1:30 mark just on time. So
excellent.
So awesome. Thank you everybody in the chat. Thank you for any donations and any new members. I don't get the notifications like I do when I'm on my OBS. That's why I like that, because I can get the notifications. So thank you guys, and thank you mods in the chat, and of course thank you, Steve, for coming on, and we'll love to have you on soon,
Absolutely.
soon. So all right, thank you very much. Have a good night, Steve.
Thank you.
And all right, everybody. If you guys have not, go check out. For those that are into paranormal, I put out a video yesterday. We had caught something at Skinwalker Ranch. I know the live show at Skinwalker Ranch was really shaky. I apologize. So we're gonna do. I'm gonna see if I can try to fix it, but I'm gonna take a lot of that footage and kind of fix it to where it's not shaky. So I apologize about that. And then further live shows, when I go out, I've got a selfie stick that won't cause the shakiness. So we actually caught a UFO at Skinwalker Ranch. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. It's my latest video I put out yesterday. So it's pretty cool. And we're still looking into that. So if you're into that thing, check that out. And then I'll be on tomorrow. We're going to be turning in donations for the pets and everything. So we'll do the pet show, turning in donations to the Humane Society. So stay tuned for that. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we're going to sign off. I love you guys, and have a great night.